All right, you guys are good to go.
Okay. Good afternoon. This is Senator Marilyn Moore. I'm convening the meeting of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Subcommittee, General Obligation Bonding Committee. I welcome you all here today. My co-chair and ranking, would you all like to say something?
No, just, well, yes, I'm looking forward to today's meeting. I think they've been wonderfully productive. I'm happy to see DECD and Department of Housing on the agenda today. I know they have a lot of great programs. And I just wanted to mention also up front that we may need to reschedule our next session that we have with OPM because we learned this morning that there's competing meetings. And I just wanted to say it at the top of the meeting because I know we might run late, we might lose some folks. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. My rankings, Representative Piscopo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, beautiful spring day again. And thank everybody for coming and thank staff for being here and making this all happen.
Thank you. Is Senator Wong on? He's our new ranking.
Yeah, I don't see him right now.
All right, then. So who'll be representing DECD today?
Senator Moore, it's David Lehman. I'm happy to kick it off if that's all right.
Thank you, sir. You can go forward.
Great. Well, Madam Chairs, I should say, and Ranking Member Piscopo, thank you very much for having us here. I'll just make a couple brief remarks. We have the full team from DECD on to answer any questions you have about bonding or the programs that we have that utilize bonding. I would just summarize quickly that there are really four main initiatives that are in the governor's budget. You know, first and foremost, the Brownfields program that DECD has utilized for many years. That is a critical program, in our opinion, to continue to revitalize cities, to make it possible for municipalities and developers to clean up sites that otherwise wouldn't have been cleaned up. That is some of the most important money, in my opinion, that the state can help facilitate and enable this development. So that's a program we're very committed to, and we can talk more about that, but that's really critical money, especially with the legislation that was passed in this special session this past year as it relates to the Transfer Act. The second program, I guess the second two programs, I'll lump them together. We have Kelly Valeries here, who is the Chief Workforce Officer for the state and for the governor. And there's a significant investment for her initiatives, including Career Connect CT, as well as others that she plans on rolling out. So in general, workforce training is something we are very committed to, have high conviction that is really good return on investment for the state of Connecticut. And alongside that, there's money for the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, $10 million in each of the next 2 years. There are several programs in the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. A few I'll just call out. There's what's called the voucher program, which is really a way, and this really helps small manufacturers, not the big manufacturers, but typically our average manufacturer, I think, has around 20 employees. But this is a way for the state to help them make capital investments if they're buying new equipment. There's also an apprenticeship program, incumbent worker training. So this is a big part of the workforce training initiative that we want to continue. Happy to answer any questions on that. And then lastly, Small Business Express. You know, we've asked for $25 million in each of the upcoming 2 years. We are pivoting the Small Business Express program, as we've addressed with the Commerce Committee. There's currently a bill outstanding where we're looking to really dedicate the resources for Small Business Express, not for the state to be a lender broadly across the state of Connecticut and compete with banks. We're really looking to focus our monies in targeted areas to help minority and women-owned businesses, more underbanked groups that aren't going to have as much access to capital, and really dedicate our resources there, again, as opposed to competing with banks for certain loans. We just don't think that's the right way to spend our resources. So that legislation is pending with the legislature right now, but the intent is to really be much more targeted with the Small Business Express monies going forward. With that, I'll stop, and we're happy to answer any and all questions.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about the Career Connecticut program. Could you share some information on that with us?
Absolutely, Senator Moore. Kelly, why don't you take the lead there?
Sure, absolutely. So the Career Connect program is really a program focused on funding short-term sector-based training programs. And we've been working very closely with the workforce boards and with the community colleges on existing programs, but also looking at emerging industries that we do not have specific sector-based training programs on, such as IT, healthcare, bioscience, green jobs, business services are areas that we really have a lot of opportunity in, and there's a lot of demand in those areas. And so what these short-term sector training programs are designed to do is provide really targeted in-demand skills to people in a short-term intensive training program. So typically they last between 4 to 10 weeks. They could go up to 15 weeks, depending on what the skill sets are. They're really aligned with industry demand, and we run them in conjunction with the demand of industry. So we're ensuring that people who come into these training programs have a place to go as soon as they finish those training programs. And what we're finding across the state right now is there's almost as many job openings as there are people who are unemployed. And the big problem is the mismatch in skills. And typically the people who are unemployed have the lower level skills. And so we need to reskill them into these newer emerging industries and into the fields of manufacturing that we've been doing. So these programs are really important. And what is a little bit different about this fund is it also gives us the flexibility to ensure that we're using these funds as they are in demand, but we're also being able to provide some wraparound services to support people while they're in these training programs, and to ensure that there's some incumbent worker training on the inside once they get employed. So what we've typically done historically is provide short-term training programs, get them employed, and leave the rest kind of up to the employers. And what we want to do is provide a little bit more of a comprehensive program where we can support them getting into these entry-level jobs and then upskilling them a little bit, so that we're not just putting them in a lower wage job, but we have upward mobility for them. So that fund is really been designed to be flexible. And again, we work very closely with the workforce boards, ensuring the intake is also increased. So one of the things that we want to use some of those funds for is to build a statewide portal, so that everyone who is looking for a job has a centralized place to go for this upskilling opportunities and to engage in sector-based training programs. So as the workforce boards do a really great job, but there are certain members and niches in the communities that don't always connect into the American Job Center system. And so this portal will be more widely used by community organizations, by businesses, anyone who wants to put a connection to the portal on their website who are looking for skilled workers can do that. And that gives us a funnel. So this has been a model in Eastern Connecticut. When they built out the manufacturing pipeline initiative, they developed this portal, and they have over 9,000 people in that portal right now looking for work. And so it's a great way for us to ensure that we are connecting to all of those people who need this reskilling and upskilling to get into new jobs. So I'm happy to answer any other specific questions that you may have.
So Kelly Marie, thank you for that. The money, is it given directly to the workforce board or to the trainee? How is the money used?
Right, so most of the time it flows through the workforce boards, but there are opportunities for us to work directly with other program providers, but we will be mostly focused on the workforce boards. And then if there's a gap in their capability and ability to fund another type of a program that is in demand, then we would be able to have the flexibility to go directly to the program providers. And the majority of our program providers who actually do the training are the community colleges, but there are other program providers, like we've been working with Year Up last year, who does a section of the training that the community colleges don't do on the professional skills side. So we're really trying to make sure that we not only give people the technical skills that they need, but also the employability and professional skills that they need to be successful in those companies once they have those technical skills.
So the funding would be used to the training, whoever's providing the training, whether it's a workforce or board or someone else, to pay for the cost of them to conduct the training?
Correct. Yes, and then wraparound services, some supportive services like transportation, technology, those types of things.
Would it pay for tools or
Yep.
books and things
Yep,
like that?
tools, books. And I didn't mention childcare because we have historically used this in childcare, but the Office of Early Childhood has committed a large amount of funding that they're getting through the federal funding to support childcare for people who are in short-term training programs. So that supportive service will be there, and we're happy to say that we can stretch the Career Connect dollars further by having that supportive service be funded through the Office of Early Childhood.
Thank you. Well, I see some of my members have their hand up, so I'll go to my ranking member, John Piscopo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner and team, for being here. Commissioner, I'll start off with a quick, but sincere compliment. Your liaisons are great. Tommy and Colin Cooper there, they're just so responsive whenever we have a problem. We've had our share over the years. So I just want to quick compliment you on that. I've been through a few governors in my day, and economic development commissioners, and you guys are very, very responsive. I'm very appreciative and grateful for that.
Thank you. Appreciate the compliment.
The Senate chair covered my field of questioning pretty well, because she kind of hit on. I just read 881 again this morning, so she hit on what capital spending should be, as opposed to, I'm sure you spent some time over appropriations for ongoing expenses, salaries, and those kind of things. And I'm always kind of protective of capital bonding for capital improvements, buildings and roofs and things like that. And so I'm having trouble with drawing that line with this initiative. It's a lot of money. And I haven't had time to go over to the appropriation side and see what they're doing over there on this program. Do you have any comments or something? Maybe, and Kelly, that was a good summary, by the way, on the bill. Thank you.
Can I just
Go ahead.
Can I maybe make two comments, and then Kelly can jump in? So, Representative, I very much understand the point when we're bonding for programs or operational expenses, as opposed to programs that have or assets that have a 20, 30, or 40-year expected life. I think here, though, we really need to think about workforce as an investment, and I think it is appropriate to bond when you expect a return on that investment. I think workforce has long been a real asset of Connecticut's, and yes, arguably some of the workforce can leave the state, but I think if we make investments in our workforce, you can justify the use of borrowing to fund that investment. That's the first point I'd make. The second point, and certainly if there is a way to get more general fund dollars for workforce programs, from my perspective, that makes a lot of sense. But I think bonding it, I think, is certainly justifiable. The other point I would just make from a more macro perspective is, we're at a very unique time in terms of interest rates and where the state can bond. Interest rates are incredibly low, and the state can actually borrow money at negative real interest rates right now. So this is some of the lowest cost of capital we've ever seen. So I mentioned that just because the hurdle, arguably, that we need to achieve for that return is as low as it's ever been. So I think that backdrop needs to be taken into account. But I really think about all of these programs as investments, even when we're funding operational expenses. Kelly, I don't know if you want to add anything or how you think about it.
Yeah, I'll add one thing. So the Career Connect program is modeled after the Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative in Eastern Connecticut that's been very successful. And so over the last 5 years, we have trained and placed 1,700 people and generated approximately $144 million in salaries. And so all of those salaries that we have generated then turn back around into taxpayer dollars that come back to the state. So this is really one of those places where you invest, and you're investing in getting people back to work or upskilling them to get higher wages. So potentially you're pulling people off of supportive services and having them be more independent wage earners and being able to get family sustaining wages. And then you're also, because the community colleges tend to be the major program providers, that funding is flowing through the community colleges. So it's also supporting those colleges. And then it's coming back in the wages that we're getting those people back to work with regards to taxpayer dollars. So I think it's really one of those things that's we're almost recycling money through the system, and we're getting a real good output for that money going through the system.
Thank you very much. And another question, I assume arts is still under your umbrella, the economic development umbrella, and it
is.
stimulates that kind of investment you talked about earlier on that other program. It seems a good time, take advantage of a good time when some of our theaters are down and stuff like that for renovations. I would imagine you're taking full advantage of whatever federal monies are coming in, and maybe stepping up your capital improvement ambitions in the arts and in the arts field. Theaters,
Yeah, so
museums.
let me take that, and then maybe Glenn can jump in too. So there's not subjective monies for capital improvements at private theaters or not-for-profit theaters that we have in any significant way. There was a program that the governor sponsored with some of the CARES Act money, but that was really to try to help get some of these theaters through the past year. And now there is this Shuttered Venues grant program at the federal level, which has had its share of debate for sure, but it is out there, and that really is the main initiative to try to keep these theaters going. If there is a real need for capex at certain theaters, and not every theater is going to be the same, so some have talked to us about it, but there's not a specific program that we have, nor the federal government at this point that I'm aware of, for capital improvements. But Glenn, anything you want to add to that, or anything I'm missing there?
No, I mean, I think that's correct. I think, to some extent, those types of projects have been handled through Urban Act or through special acts. Within kind of our programs now, we have a grant and aids for the Good to Great program. But that's for, again, smaller grants and not really focused on the capital projects, if you will. So I think that's something that we're going to continue to evaluate as we move forward and funding from the federal government comes down.
Thank you. I see a lot of hands up. One quick question is we used to have history, I think it was the History Commission, in that there was like a 15-minute visit to the subcommittee. Is that under your purview now, Commissioner?
There's historic preservation. SHPO is still part of it. Yes, I didn't know if there's something different. Yes, that is within DECD and the very active group.
Thank you very much again, and thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, sir.
Thanks for everything.
Co-Chair Dorinda Bohr, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Senator.
Welcome.
And I just like to echo what our ranking member, Representative Piscopo, said about all the work that you've all done through 2020. I know a lot of information and a lot of programs were coming fast and furious, and you managed them and helped us to get them out into our districts as quickly as we could. So thank you for all your responsiveness on that. I wanted to switch gears to the Small Business Express, and I've been trying to decipher the bonding agenda this morning, and it looks like, so there was 12.8 million in unallocated, and maybe 3 was allocated today through the agenda or planned to be allocated. So that still leaves 9 million in unallocated. Is there a plan in the immediate future to release the rest of that unallocated funds so that we could support the small businesses?
Glenn, do you want to take that?
Sure. So just to address kind of your first point around the 12.8 million, that's unallocated balance. And so as you referenced, we have on the upcoming bond commission agenda next week to draw down the 3.8 million for Small Business Express. But then of that 12.8, 4 million is actually allocated and earmarked for HEDCO, for our Minority Revolving Loan Fund. And so we'll be coming to the bond commission at some point this year to draw down those dollars. And so the remaining balance, yes, to your point, goes to that broader bucket of kind of our strategy in the Small Business Express 2.0 on how we advance providing access to capital and technical assistance to our small business community.
Okay, great. So the governor recommended 25 million for 22 and 25 million for 23. But we're looking, so it sounds like there's a balance in unallocated, which would be around 5. So are you saying that your goal is to get the rest of that current unallocated balance out in the upcoming bonding commission meeting?
Yeah, so at a future point, because we're going to be drawing down the 3 million, so the 5 million plus the 4 that I mentioned for HEDCO, we'll be drawing down that at a future point in time from the bond commission. And then the new allocation is 25 and 25 over the next biennium to replenish the fund. So we have more runway to provide support and access to capital to businesses over the next 2 years.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Thank
Representative, the only thing I just want to underscore the point, we really want to change the way that that program works. So I think getting the money out the door in its old format is not something that we think is good policy, candidly. We want to change the way that the Small Business Express program works to be more effective and more targeted with the state's resources.
Great, great to hear. We look forward to learning more about that. Let's see, on the Career Connect, it sounds like an exciting program, and I'm very interested to learn more and looking to see that launch. There was 70 million in the Department of Labor for a workforce program. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was a workforce development pipeline program. It was canceled in this year's governor's budget. It never quite got off the ground. So I'm just wondering, now that was Department of Labor, were there any lessons learned? I know it's not your agency, but I'm not quite sure why it never got off the ground. Does this have similarities? Is this different?
Kelly?
Yeah, so again, it's a Department of Labor program that I wasn't around for, so I can't really answer, lessons learned there. But one thing I would comment on is this program is a lot more flexible and enables us to really meet the in demand. So we have over 100,000 people who are currently unemployed, and the majority of them are underskilled and minorities. And so really we want to make sure that we're connecting this money to meet those needs of the minority people and underskilled people who really need to get upskilled and reskilled into work. And I think this is a much more flexible fund that would enable us to do that.
Okay, great. And then does any of this cross over into reentry workforce programs?
Absolutely. So when we're looking at those who need to get back into the labor force, we're looking at veterans, reentry, opportunity youth, those with disabilities and racial minorities are really on our radar screen and making sure that we're meeting the needs of those populations and ensuring they get back to work.
So you're working hand in hand with the Department of Correction?
Yes, we've had multiple conversations with the Department of Corrections, with veterans, with social services and DCF. And so we are having active conversations to ensure that these programs do meet those needs.
Okay, that's great. And we had a bill in public safety around a reentry program, pilot program in New Haven, where there's one source of information and assistance to help with those reentering. So it sounds like that this would be a great complement to that program.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really looking to braid funding as well. So when we understand where the funding is in all the different pots of the different state agencies, is how can we maximize that by using those dollars in the right places and filling in with Career Connect dollars that will be a lot more flexible.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then one last question, David, I don't know if you could update us on the West River unallocated funding for the homes in New Haven and Woodbridge that are impacted.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the staff is on that has the latest on that. I'm not sure there's been, Representative, I'm not sure with the subsidence issues, I'm not sure there's been an updated ask that's come in from the not-for-profit. We did allocate some monies, I believe, last year, but let me stop and see if staff is aware. Otherwise, we can get you a better answer or a more up-to-date answer if what I said is not the case.
Yeah, I think we're still, just if I can jump in, we sent out a letter to applicants notifying that they were eligible in March of 2020. So I'm trying to, understand if there's been any movement, but we did get the ball rolling because it was stalled for some time. So happy to get you some further information on kind of where we are with that program. But we did start the process to make folks know and residents know that they're eligible for these funds.
Great. I think probably the legislators from New Haven and Woodbridge, if you provide them with the information, they can help disseminate it out into the communities as well.
We will follow up on that, Representative.
Okay, all right. Okay, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Meskers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, David, to the team at all, I'd like to congratulate you for an incredible job you performed in the midst of the pandemic with the shutdown, the reopen, the mask rules, the hundreds of inquiries you fielded. None of us signed up for that job, and I think you've acquitted yourself admirably in a very stressful situation.
Appreciate it.
And moving on to, I guess, the commentary from Kelly Marie. I'd like us to go forward in the future with an analysis of your role versus the Department of Education, the Department of Labor, Social Services, and whether we as a legislature, even apart from our committee, are you properly empowered in this committee to make sure that we coalesce the resources we're using for workforce development? So as you begin to see obstacles and how you can smooth it and bring it to fruition, I think the target group you're talking about, which are people where you're trying to improve the skill set, is the most important for social mobility and social justice in the state. So if we don't do that, we fail. And I don't care whether that's in the Department of the Education Department, the Department of Labor, I don't care what department's involved. So if we have to use a little bit of a wrecking ball in terms of the agencies versus the DECD, or figure out the oversight, I'd like to have those frank conversations when we're finished with the budget. So I just ask you to consider that. Your comments about the 9,000, I believe you mentioned in that workforce group that was either searching or connecting through your group. You mentioned, or one of you mentioned it today. I don't know how to do this politely because the Department of Labor, I think, has done an incredible job, but whoever does their website needs to go back to school. It's the most unfriendly site for unemployed people. So I'm not sure whether you need to rent space or own space on that website, because if people are unemployed and applying, the resources that are, whether they're going through the Department of Education or the DECD, I think we have to make sure that Department of Labor website has a front page where the efforts you're making to connect people with labor and employment are on that page. So I just make a strong recommendation there. And so those are kind of my airtime soliloquy. I guess the only question I have that's important, or that I would think is important, is when you mentioned the brownfields and remediation. That to me has a significant impact in improving the tax, the mill rate, productive assets. Are we appropriately funded on the soil brownfield remediation for development of work sites for the cities? And is that, do we need more money there?
Yeah, let me take a swing, and then Alexandra should jump in as well. The short answer is yes, we think we are. There's going to be some additional monies on the agenda for the Bond Commission next week. Alexandra and the team are running a process right now. I think we'll have a better sense if the need is much greater, by the end of this calendar year, I should say. But based on what we're seeing in the process right now, there certainly is demand, but making sure that we're really funding the projects that are shovel ready or very close to it, where we think we're really going to spur the development. To me, the 25 million a year, I think is appropriate there. Okay. Alexandra, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I agree with the short answer. I do think that we have the right amount of money in the pipeline and in our request for future fiscal years. We did we are running a process, as Commissioner Lehman said, and we were oversubscribed in that process, you know, with greater demand than funds. But that's actually a good position to be in, because we do evaluate each project to see how shovel ready it is, how much impact it's going to have on the tax rolls and all that. So I think the ratio that we saw with this round, I think, is a healthy ratio where we will be able to fund a good chunk of the projects, and really, but still also be able to make sure that the projects that we're funding are strong and really the best use of taxpayer money.
The only thing I'd ask, just to sum up on that, I'd like to know the break point going forward on the applications. So at the marginal dollar value, if you're starting to turn away good projects, but you think you're still doing a good job, I would argue let's take a little more risk and get a little more projects through the pipeline.
No, we hear you. We're aligned there.
Okay.
If we feel like we need more money because there's great projects to do that we're turning away, we will absolutely be advocates for it. So we understand the point and we agree.
I'm done. Thank you much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Commissioner, for being here and team. And I echo the comments and thanks for all that you've done over the past year. I know that you all heard from me quite frequently, and I appreciate the attentiveness to me and my constituency. Much of what was just discussed with Representative Meskers is exactly what I wanted to discuss. Obviously, being very involved in the transfer act changes, just have some concern knowing that the program, the Brownfields program, has been oversubscribed, and concern over whether or not this is enough going forward, and making sure, because I suspect a lot of this is really earmarked, knowing who is applying for the program, who is shovel ready, and what do we do as more comes online. So that was my first point, and I hear you loud and clear, and good to hear that there's a commitment to this program, and if there comes the need to be vying for more dollars, that you'll be right there. I wonder if you could, there's some other questions I had have already been answered, so thank you for that, and thanks to my colleagues for being of the same mind. But I wonder if you could talk also to some of these other unallocated balances, and what might be happening there with specifically to the grants and aid to nonprofit organizations for cultural and historic sites, as well as the grants and aid to the children's museums, aquariums, and whatnot, and maybe speak to what's going on with those balances.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Is anyone from the capital projects team on that can answer on the museums? I see that some of those monies haven't gone out for a while, and I believe they may have been geared towards specific projects. And again, my understanding is the ask hasn't come in. It's not like we've been saying no, but I'm not sure if anyone on the team has that. If not, we can always follow up with you, Senator.
Is it that nobody's asking for the money at all? It's just been is this an unallocated? I wasn't on the bonding subcommittee, so I didn't dive in this deeply in past sessions, but I'm just curious, has this been unallocated for quite some time?
Well, my understanding is, we can go through it. One of the programs, I believe in the summary, has been basically postponed or indefinitely put on hold. So there's been no allocations for that program. But for if you're referencing the Science Center and the Maritime Aquarium, I believe there were specific projects associated with that. And I know there hasn't been an allocation for 2016, I believe the memo said.
Yeah, so I guess which ones are you zoning in on? I can help clarify. Or are you just asking a general question?
I'm just asking in general about those that are unallocated that we hadn't gone over yet.
Yeah, so like Commissioner stated, with the grants and aids to nonprofits and the aquariums, museums, that goes back to initial allocation from authorization in fiscal year 15, of which a portion of that was drawn down. And so the 2.6 is what's remaining, but it's been remaining since 2016. And so the bond commission has not approved those projects, and there hasn't been a request that has come forth from those organizations, if you will. The larger bucket here, which is grant and aids to nonprofit organizations sponsoring cultural and historic sites for the 10.5, that was the program that I mentioned earlier. This program was designed specifically for smaller grants in support of cultural sites and kind of promoting tourism, if you will. And there's been about 2 rounds of those funds. There wasn't a round that the arts and culture team was going to put forth, but then COVID hit. And so they are now preparing to administer those funds for a next round in the coming year, if you will. So there are plans to get that money out the door, just as an example.
Okay, thanks, Gwendolyn. It's funny, it's like you knew my next question because you talked a little bit earlier, we were talking about the distinguishing between capital improvements and such. And, certainly economic build, as you mentioned before, can be thought of as capital improvements. And so I know I had a conversation with Commissioner Lehman about this a couple of days ago, but arts and tourism, particularly important, to get our economy moving, but probably arguably never more important. We have a lot of shuttered venues. They're getting help, certainly, hopefully from the federal government. We've done what we could in terms of the arts here in Connecticut. But I think certainly one could argue we need to be doing a whole heck of a lot more in order to really get things moving post-COVID. And I just wonder, if any of that's being accounted for. I hear you talking about this, potential with this particular unallocated balance, but is there any thought on using some of those dollars? What can we do in terms of arts and tourism, and how come, not only are we not asking for bonding, but that, it's flat in the budget in terms of appropriation. So I just wondered if you could speak to that a little bit.
So, Senator, I think there is absolutely a conversation that should be had as it relates to how the brand of the state broadly. And in my mind, that's a couple of things. Certainly, it's tourism, and I think there is pretty good data that suggests tourist marketing that's spent, if you can capture more share, which we think we can, there is a real return on that spend. So I think you could certainly discuss bonding for some of that, but we need to track that very, very carefully. But also under brand, I think equally important, and maybe even more important now, are some of the new residents that the state's received as a result of the pandemic and some of the migration patterns, but also prospective residents. I think there could be a shift here. So when we're thinking about growth in the state, I think part of it's tourism, but I think part of it is full-time residents. And I think broadly marketing our brand, telling people who we are through various channels. Obviously, it's not just TV commercials, but through various channels, I think is something that we should discuss, because I think there is arguably a real return on that. But the question is, where does that money come from? Is it potentially some of the federal dollars? Is it bonding dollars, or is there more money in the general fund for it?
All good questions.
I didn't mean to answer your question with a question, but I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have, because I think we're at a real opportune time, in my opinion, in Connecticut to capitalize on some of these trends.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, I see Representative Duchette. Is your hand up?
Okay,
sir?
thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, everyone. A couple of hopefully quick questions, one on Career Connect and then a quick one on SBE. On Career Connect, Kelly, I know you've been in the hot seat and you've already gotten a lot of questions, but it's a new program and it's one that's important to all of us, I think. And certainly we've had some conversations as well. But my question is really about the implementation of this program and whether or not we are in a position to quickly and efficiently implement this program. As soon as these funds are authorized and then allocated. I'm understanding that you envision this program to be sort of modeled after the Eastern Connecticut pipeline program. Is that correct? Okay. So how long do we think it will take to stand up these programs in other parts of the state? What will it actually look like on the ground. So the training programs, where will they be located? You mentioned the way that the portal will work, and we'll be working with industry and all of that. So where will they be located? In terms of education, who are our specific partners there? I'm specifically thinking, of course, about the community colleges. Also thinking about adult education programs throughout the state. And of course, you know that my sort of pet project is the high schools, particularly the comprehensive high schools, because I know that we have technical high schools that are doing a great job of sort of feeding into the system when it comes to manufacturing. So again, my question is kind of a broad one, but really it gets to, you know, how quickly are we in a position to stand these programs up? Where are they going to be located? And how are they going to be administered and implemented as the rubber meets the road?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you, Representative. So there's already infrastructure in place across the 5 workforce boards to do this. And they've all been doing programming in a similar fashion for many, many years. And last fall, when we had some CARES Act funding, we stood up some programs very quickly, and especially around healthcare, to really meet the regional needs of the hospitals around in the healthcare systems. And we did some pilot programs in IT in the fall as well. So, and since then, we've been doing a deep dive in the labor market data, working very closely with the Department of Labor and with our industry partners who are in our regional sector partnerships and on our workforce council, to really understand where the demand is specifically. And we've been we had subcommittee meetings already established with the different industry sectors. And so we're very close to having those links to the existing jobs now, as we've been having these conversations and tracking that. But typically what happens is the workforce boards get the funding, they pull in the program participants, typically put them through an assessment process to understand what their current skill levels are, what their interests are, and provide remediation through the adult education programs if necessary, and get them into programs in the sectors that are of interest to them, and then be able to provide the supportive services that they need to ensure that they can fully participate in those programs. And then the workforce boards are already connected with many employers, but we're also bringing in a higher level of employer engagement and having those conversations up front, so that as people complete programs, there's jobs waiting for them fairly soon after they complete those programs. So we're very confident in the system that already is established, and we have been working closely with the community colleges, with the regional presidents and the regional chief workforce officers to develop programming. So this isn't something like brand new that they've never done. It's really an extension of the work that they've already been doing. And we've been working closely with them since probably last August on these programs. And we're meeting with the workforce boards on a weekly basis now to ensure that we're in lockstep of how these programs are going to be rolled out.
Okay, that's good, and that all makes perfect sense. I guess my concern, and still my frankly confusion, is to how these programs are actually going to be administered, where we can go to our communities and guide them in the right direction to utilize these programs. So I guess I just I want to see a little more detail as to how this is actually going to work when we're ready to press the go button. And I understand, as I think it was Representative Metzger said, to a certain extent, we're taking a wrecking ball to the old sort of substructure and creating something new, which is fine. But at the same time, the need is so critical right now, obviously, with everything we've been through over the last year. And again, we've had this conversation. Another question is, how do our comprehensive high schools students fit into all this? There's a lot of emphasis, it seems to me, on incumbent worker training, on those who are sort of changing careers, which is great. And I think if we're rank ordering and priority legitimately, so maybe of higher priority. But how do you see our comprehensive high school students fitting into this?
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to, there is some programs that we're working on with the State Department of Ed. One of them is to ensure that all of the comprehensive high schools are open after school, so that, or the CTEC high schools, I'm sorry, the vocational high schools are open after school, so that the comprehensive students can go to those facilities and take advantage of their curriculum and their facilities in after school programming that they'll get credit for. And there's a few pilot programs that are already in place right now. And then we want to make sure that they're open late into the evenings and on the weekends, so that we can get adult education training in there as well. And so we want to make sure that we're fully utilizing all of the facilities that we currently have, including the community colleges, and making sure that the conversations we're having with them is to ensure that there's programming available for high school students to go to those facilities, to ensure that we're, again, fully utilizing, whether they're open on Saturdays, can we have them extended hours in the summertime? That's really where the big expense is in those facilities, and we want to make sure we're fully utilizing them. I also wanted to share with you, this is a great example of how nimble our programs could be. I got a phone call from Representative Rochelle last fall with a concern that Derby High School's new manufacturing program wasn't being fully utilized. So we engaged with the workforce board, Joe Carbone in the workplace, and worked with Representative Rochelle. And I literally got an email today that their program is ready to go, and they have the first set of cohort adults going through Derby High School in the next month. So that's how we can be really nimble in ensuring that when somebody has a need, and we can connect to the resources, and we can do that. And one other thing that we're doing with the proposal that we made to the governor and OPM and SDE is what we're calling kind of like Student 5.0, is a program that was piloted last summer. And basically we're taking high school students who don't have a post-secondary plan, and we're putting them in career mentors with peer mentors, giving them a career awareness, different assessments on where their interests and skills lay. And then what's going to be new to that this year is we're going to then take and connect those students right into these sector-based training programs, so that as soon as they figure out where their interests lie and what they want to do, we now have the funding to be able to give them these sector-based training programs and move them into jobs. So we have on average 9,000 students a year who graduate and don't have a post-secondary plan. And this year it's even more than that, because we have a whole group of students that disengaged from school last year. And so we're working with the State Department of Ed and with the workforce boards on how do we find those kids and get them connected into these programs, and especially into the sector-based training programs.
Excellent. Yeah, that all sounds great. And there's a lot of need there. My thought, and I even submitted a bill to this effect, which this subcommittee doesn't traditionally, get proposed bills, but I did it almost as a placeholder for the idea, is that we need a separate authorization just for those programs, so that focus doesn't get lost in what we're doing. Want to continue to discuss that with the subcommittee, and maybe that's something that we can do, not to necessarily supplant, what's being proposed by the governor, but to add to it. One quick one, shifting gears a little bit on SBE, for the benefit of those of us who are not on the Commerce Committee and have heard about the 2.0 or this year's version of the 2.0. My understanding of that is that it will act as a public-private partnership, and we'll be leveraging funds from the banking community. Could you talk to a little bit about how that is anticipated to work, and what sort of the mechanics of that program will look like?
I'll do it briefly, and then Glenn can jump in. So there's really two different flavors of what we're trying to achieve, Representative. One is exactly what you said, which is shifting from a model where the state is basically providing direct lending and making that lending decision, the underwriting decision, to really work with the private sector in what was called the CAB program, or capital business, where the state would basically provide a guarantee or potentially provide a guarantee. And it's an opt-in program. And this is just a first loss guarantee, I should be clear, where there's a couple, 1 or 2, or maybe it's more % at the bottom of the capital structure, but the vast majority of the risk is the banks, the underwriting is the banks, the onboarding of the client is the banks. So that's a way for us to potentially complement what the bank's doing while taking some risk to enable lending. But the reality is we talked to a lot of banks, Glenn and myself and the team. Most of the feedback from banks was just, we've got capital, we've got balance sheet, we want to lend. There's plenty of federal programs that the SBA has to do guarantees as well. Effectively, they said, stay out of our way. Some said it nicer than that, but we're going to have a program where we can, take some risk and hopefully enable them to be a bit more aggressive or provide some more proceeds to Connecticut small businesses. That's part one of the new SBE. Part two is more of a direct lending program, as I mentioned at the outset, focused on targeted areas, and Glenn and myself will need to define this, and there'll be a process to really work with a third party, most likely a non-bank lender, where we would allocate some of the bonding funds to the community development and financial institution to make direct investments in certain communities for certain types of borrowers. Again, minority and women-owned businesses is going to be a huge focus. The benefit of that is we're going to have a true expert in lending, in community lending, making these loans in a targeted area. The state is going to be providing some of those funds. There's a chance we think that there could be private or other philanthropic corporate funds that could go alongside our funds in these lending areas. We'll need to see that and test the market, but that's where the direct lending is going to be. But again, we're not going to be doing it. The state DECD is not going to be doing it. We're going to be allocating that to someone that does this, that is their day job. Glenn, anything you want to add there?
No, I think you covered it. I think the reality is that the market is a little upside down, as you can all imagine, because of COVID, and just the anxiety of businesses not really needing debt or wanting debt, right? They really need grants, and there's a lot of money coming down from the federal government to support that. So I imagine, that's going to be in play for the next, 12 months. Right. And so after that, it's really on like, how do we get to a more normalized market? And so our plan is really built on how do we work better with the private sector on that first prong, and potentially providing, a first loss guarantee, and again, allowing the banks to take on a little bit more risk while helping kind of sharing that risk, if you will. The second piece is, as David mentioned, is really where I think we're gonna really go lean in a bit, is really working with our CDFIs, those organizations that are mission-based. And so their sole purpose is to provide capital to underbanked communities, Black and Brown communities, women-owned businesses. And so that is definitely a gap in the market we're seeing. So we really want to use our limited resources to impact that. And so we really want to partner with them, because again, that's what they do and how we can incentivize and leverage and stand up more kind of revolving loan funds alongside the private market, if you will. So that's kind of our approach in a nutshell, is really getting DECD out of the direct lending business, and really incentivizing the private market to come alongside us and create a more efficient market.
No, that sounds great. And I think that's absolutely the right approach. I'm excited to see it get going. As you know, I spent a lot of time with those bankers too, and they love talking about those guarantee programs. And frankly, I think that is the best way to leverage those dollars, and so that the state isn't in the lending business and assuming 100% of the risk. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Before I go to Senator Long, I want to just ask Kelly, you've been the center of attraction here for us with this new program. You mentioned keeping schools open later for adult ed. Would that money would not be coming out of someone else's budget and not yours?
Correct. That funding is not coming out of Career Connect, but that's a project that we've been working with the State Department of Ed and in adult education programs.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, I think we've talked about that and we recognized it for quite a while. So I'm really eager to see how that rolls out. And then, Commissioner, you mentioned women business. I wanted to ask you, how is the Minority Business Enterprise Assistance Program functioning?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. So the current program is that HEDCO has helped us administer is going well. The MBI board meets regularly and we review the monies that are going out. We also stood up with $5 million dedicated to small loans to minority-owned businesses during the pandemic. Effectively, it was roughly 500 of those loans that were put out through HEDCO that became forgivable, that were effectively grants. In addition, there was a big focus during the pandemic to make sure that the other programs the state was doing, that we were getting that money into minority-owned businesses, but really distressed municipalities as well. So I think part of this overall change in Small Business Express, we are having to think about what are we doing on the minority business initiative side of things, given the focus of the Small Business Express program, candidly, is going to be on minority businesses broadly, but that's a real topic they're going through.
Thank you. I'll be following up with that. Did you use all the funds available in that program?
I believe there are some funds remaining, but we're coming to the end. We can get you a specific number unless then you have it.
Yeah, so for the most part, there was, just to back up, right, there was 5 million dedicated over 5 years from the initial authorization. And so as I mentioned earlier, there's still about 4 million that is unallocated that we plan to draw down. And so to date, they've probably expended a little over 15 million. So there's still some runway there. And as you can imagine, again, because the market is a little upside down and there's not a real appetite for debt to some extent, the pipeline has slowed down a little bit, but hopefully once we turn the corner, the spigot starts to open a bit more and we can get more deals.
And that falls under the Small Business Express?
Yes, it's an allocation of the Small Business Express program.
Thank you. Thank you both. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and happy Friday to you, Commissioner Lehman and Deputy Commissioner Thames. I want to, before I start, give a big public thank you for your department's tireless efforts. I know many of my colleagues have said it as well, but it really, truly is well-deserved that the work that you've all done on behalf of Connecticut businesses during this economic crisis, as well as a public health crisis, has been remarkable. You've been professional and responsive, so truly a big thank you. I also want to extend a thank you to Kelly Marie for her co-chairman leadership with Gary Moran on the Governor's Workforce Council, and good luck on your new appointment or your appointment to lead the workforce unit. And a big hello to Mr. Colin Cooper as well for joining us as well. So I want to get right to the Career Connect training allocation. Will it be coordinated with the recommendations from the Governor's Workforce Council or through Senate Bill 811, which is the workforce development bill that's going through the process right now, or any other proposal?
Yes,
anybody can answer that. Can you share that? Are there similarities or there examples of objectives or programs that you could share with us?
Sure. So we're really going to partner with everyone that is part of this process. And I also want to mention that in Senate Bill 885, as part of that bill, it calls to have a governor's workforce cabinet, which would be made up with the commissioners from the different agencies that have workforce streams in it. So that cabinet will be a strong advisory board to Career Connects and the other initiatives in the Governor's Workforce Council, and working very closely again with the workforce boards. And we're happy to give you, any plans. So we have a rough plan on where the demand is and what types of programs we're looking to run. And now we're working with the industry partners to understand, what is the timing of their needs, and then looking more cohesively across the programs. One of the things that we need to do is ensure that the healthcare certifications are aligned to the end of each of our programming. So we still have some, small tweaks and work to do, but we're happy to provide you a larger plan once we put all of the details together.
Thank you. With the allocated money that we see on this proposal, what are some of the programs beyond the healthcare that the workforce, being a member of the workforce, again, I'm so grateful for your work and Mr. Moran's leadership and the various subcommittee works that's been done. Are there any particular programs that you're looking at these $20 million each year for fiscal year 22 and 23 that you're going to target beyond healthcare?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the initiatives in the governor's workforce strategic plan is the sector-based training, the sector-based partnerships. And so currently we have launched 5 partnerships across the state, 4 in manufacturing, 1 in IT. We have others that are coming up right behind that. So we have a bioscience one, and we have a second IT business services one happening in Southwestern Connecticut. So we're really utilizing those industry groups to help inform us what training programs need to take place. And IT and business services are some areas that have been really underutilized for training programs in the state. So we're working closely with those partners to determine what specific skill sets they need for these sector-based training programs. And the other thing that's really powerful about these is the skills-based hiring initiative in the Governor's Workforce Council, which the IT industry is really aligned with. So basically, we're working with that industry to say, you don't necessarily need a 2 or 4-year college degree in order to do these jobs, that we're matching the skills that are necessary with the training programs so we can get people into those high-paying, ladder jobs where they can get, additional micro credentials to really move up the ladder. And the other organization we're working with is DEEP. And so there's a lot of opportunity for green jobs, and we're working closely with them to determine where those jobs are and what the skill sets are and how they align up with today's demand and future demand. So that work is being done currently in those new industries.
Thank you. And I think it's important that you note it's not just the 4-year and 2-year programs, but it seems to be alignment with vocational technical as well as apprenticeship programs, which we take in that. Would that be correct, as I understand it?
Yes, absolutely. And apprenticeship is really an important part of the work that we're doing, and having conversations with industries that don't typically think about IT or apprenticeships. And actually the IT industry is really starting to focus on apprenticeships as a way to upskill their workforce.
That's great. Thank you. Is the 20 million for fiscal year 22 and 23, is that additional to the $10 million grant from the U.S. Department of Labor, or is that pool of money being used to meet other goals?
Right. So there are a lot of different goals and initiatives that OPM is kind of sifting through what the priorities are for that. Our office did give OPM a pretty comprehensive wish list of items that we would like to see to support the other initiatives in the strategic plan. So they're working through all those funding streams now.
Okay, so this is in addition to that $10 million grant from the U.S. Do you have a sense of when that timetable is to get that $10 million grant? And what is that?
Oh, you're talking about the H-1B grant.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I was thinking about the relief funds, not the H-1B. So the
There's a lot of
H-1B
money
grant
coming
did
in.
come down, and we are working with manufacturing and IT. So this would be in addition to that. And those funds are really focused on those 2 industries and does have an apprenticeship component to it. So it's a great way for us to leverage the work that's being done right now in aligning the sector-based training programs up with those other programs that will be stood up under the H-1B, so we can leverage those dollars and not have to spend duplicative money.
Thank you. And I know it's Friday afternoon, but through you, Commissioner, if I may, just a question in regards to the grant and aid to the nonprofit organizations that are science related and the Children's Museum related. Obviously, we're looking at the Connecticut Science Center and the Maritime Museum in Norwalk. Has there been any consideration for the science merit and the educational initiatives of Connecticut's only zoo, which is Beardsley Zoo? And being this week is National Zoo Week, were there any considerations of allocations of funds to support the goal and the mission of the Beardsley Zoo?
Again, Senator, I'm not sure if you, Senator Cohen asked a variant of this question. So no is the short answer to that. My understanding of the funds that were previously authorized is they were for discrete projects, and we've not received an ask for that. We will get you a firm answer in the committee, a firm answer on that to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of where both the Maritime Aquarium as well as the Connecticut Science Center funding needs are.
Well, perhaps if I may, just a shout out for the Beardsley Zoo in future consideration as it fits in the theme of education, awareness, and science related. But again, I know it's Friday afternoon, so I want to thank you for all of your great work and your staff and team, and thank you again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
I
Senator.
want to amplify on the zoo, on the Bridgeport Zoo. It's one of the best things that's happening here. Very proud of that. Kate Farrar, Representative Farrar, you're next.
Thank you, Chairwoman Moore. Thanks, Commissioner, for being here and your team. Thanks for sticking with us on Friday afternoon, as Senator Wong noted. Just a couple questions. I think highlighting a few of the things that thankfully everyone is seemingly excited about, which I'm glad to hear, which is Career Connect. So Kelly, just a quick follow-up, a little bit of what you were getting at, I think, with Senator Wong. My understanding is beyond the bonding request, the Career Connect account would include other funds. Is that accurate?
I would need to look into that, but not to my knowledge, but I'll have to give you a more substantive answer after I look into it.
Okay, that would be super. Because I think just trying to understand what this request would be going towards versus other leveraged funds. So that would be helpful to understand. And then with this Career Connect request, do you all have even just like a range, from the standpoint of how many individuals you feel like you could imagine being served with these 2 years of funding?
Yes, so on average, it's about $10,000 per person, including the supportive services. And so, we're looking to, that's 2,000 people a year.
Wonderful. And can you specify how it would be determined who would be served as a part of those 2,000?
Right, so the applicants typically come through the workforce boards, and they have a screening process. So they have WIOA funding that has to meet a certain population, and it's the last funding. So this is really going to open up the board. I mean, that's a target population, is those who are most underserved. And then we can use these funds to kind of fill in gaps and braid with the other funding with WIOA. So when I say, 2,000 people, that's specifically with this pot of funding. But as we start braiding funding together, we can increase those numbers of people served.
So you noted at the outset, am I right to understand that those 2,000 served might be those who have been particularly unemployed or underemployed?
Yes, thank you. That is the point. So these are targeted to those people who have been unemployed, displaced during COVID, or are underskilled. So we have multiple people who are working several part-time jobs and still not having being able to meet their family obligations. So those would be the underemployed population. But yes, targeting.
Okay. Great. So just kind of following up on that, I think you noted a few targeted populations, particularly people of color, people with disabilities, our opportunity youth. We do know in this crisis that women have a greater unemployed numbers compared to men, and several of the sectors you noted have predominantly been underrepresented by women. So in regards to the funds, I know there's some funds that might be used towards marketing promotion and just trying to be more creative of reaching these targeted populations. So how do you imagine that being approached, particularly for women who've been underrepresented in these fields?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, one of the important aspects is to work closely with our community organizations, the people that really are in touch with those people in their community. And we're also working closely with the Office of Early Childhood, and they're providing supportive service dollars for childcare. And so between, what they're doing, what we're doing, we will definitely be doing an outreach campaign to ensure that we're reaching women in those fields as well. And as a matter of fact, today we just had a council meeting with the Council for Women and Girls, the Lieutenant Governor's Council. We are kind of merging efforts with their council, the Governor's Workforce Council, and the Office of Early Childhood, and really having a targeted approach on how do we help women find effective quality daycare that meets their flexible needs of scheduling, and we can help women get back into the workplace through that.
Thanks, Kelly, for noting that. And I think I'm sure this is something you all are looking at too, but there's certainly been such innovative programs out there around women only kind of apprenticeship cohorts, and there could be real opportunities for training cohorts that really focus on the best practices out there in these fields. So certainly I'm excited that you can potentially use some of these funds for those creative endeavors.
Absolutely, be happy to have more conversations with you on your ideas around that and how we can implement some of those things.
Thanks. And I just have one other quick question because I don't think my colleagues noted it yet, which was with the Manufacturing Assistance Act. Not sure, Commissioner, if that's you or someone else on your team, and just trying to understand what is being requested at the April meeting, and then what you all are anticipating further in regards to the unallocated balances.
I don't, Representative, I don't have the detail on the April meeting, what's being requested there, but certainly we'll be prepared for that meeting. In terms of the Manufacturing Assistance Act, so as the group I think is aware, this administration has really changed the way that we're thinking about bonding and really not utilized that act and MAA funding, given we haven't been doing a lot of the forgivable loans and grants that were previously done. That said, there are a lot of existing deals, if you will, and agreements with companies where some of those monies are going to be spent contingent on various job hurdles over time. So much of that money may be used as part of previous agreements. Again, there's contingent on various hurdles, as I understand those deals, and as I've looked at those deals. In addition, we have utilized from time to time the Manufacturing Assistance Act for what we call special programs for various initiatives, where state bonding or state funding is necessary for whether it's a discrete project, that fits what the MAA funding can be used for. So it's something that we've used a lot less of, but much of that funding that is authorized, we do expect to be utilized based on legacy transactions.
Great, thanks for clarifying that, and certainly we'll follow up once we see a little bit more about the April meeting. So thank you, Commissioner, and your team. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Commissioner, that fund that you just mentioned, that is a loan program, is it not?
It's quite flexible. I mean, it is used for loans, but also forgivable loans and grants. And we've used that program, for example, for times when we need to match what the federal government is doing to support a certain initiative, like the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. We'll utilize that program for that as well. So it's a flexible program, but predominantly loans.
Thank you. Representative Mashinsky.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I have three questions. First, I wanted to say to the commissioner that my town economic development commissioner, development director, is very much singing your praises in Wallingford. He thinks you're the best appointee of the governor's administration.
You're embarrassing me now, Representative.
That's what he always says that. He says, that's the best commissioner we have. I do have three questions for you. First is, we just got another Amazon warehouse in my town, and I'm wondering whether, in your view, the South Central Connecticut career training goes beyond. It seems like that you focus on healthcare training in my area, but do you see it as going beyond that? And because I'm always pushing advanced manufacturing as the other good career in my area. And if you are thinking that way, where do you call the center of training for my region?
And can you just tell me where your region is again?
Yeah, it's
Wallingford.
Wallingford. Okay.
I would say Kelly or Colin Cooper should weigh in on the programs in the manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Colin.
Well, I just want to say good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with everyone. This is the longest I think I've gone without talking about manufacturing in the last year plus. So on the manufacturing side, we've as you know, one of the items in front of this committee is funding for the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, and that fund is about 6+ years old and has provided assistance to over 2,000 Connecticut manufacturers, and it's helped create or retain almost 18,000 jobs in the state, and trained or retrained over almost 25,000 people. So very active in this area. It's all manufacturing focused. Our big training initiatives under the MIF are the apprenticeship program and the incumbent worker training. The incumbent worker training is really fabulous in terms of its cost effectiveness and its breadth. These are initiatives that are frequently developed by employers specifically for their needs. This is a program that's funded through the MIF, administered through the Department of Labor, but is really customized to each employer's needs. And so, again, we've got a tremendous amount, or historically have had a tremendous amount of training going on throughout the state, different industries. The concern right now is a number of these active programs. The apprenticeship program right now is on pause for lack of funding, manufacturing apprenticeship program. And the incumbent worker training right now is at the point where if we don't get additional funding within the next several months, those programs, a lot of those programs that are in process are going to sunset. So I would argue that this is probably not the time to have that happen. But those are really the two big training initiatives under the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. I think Kelly, you can talk about the regional sector partnerships because those are regional. There is one in South Central Connecticut, and what their focus is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So manufacturing has really been the most well-developed workforce development programs across the state of Connecticut. I'm usually the one talking most about them because I come from manufacturing, but we do have manufacturing sector partnerships happening in all 5 regions across the state of Connecticut with manufacturers highly engaged. We have very well-defined programs at almost all of our community colleges, and all of the workforce boards have very strong partnerships in manufacturing education and the workforce. So those programs are continuing, and we are looking at how do we expand programming for the comprehensive high school students so that they can get into the manufacturing facilities, whether they're at the community colleges or at the CTEC schools, so that they can get that hands-on experience in manufacturing as well. So we want to be able to fully utilize those facilities and ensure that we can bring more people into manufacturing. So one of the things that we found through COVID is that the demand for entry-level manufacturing employees kind of went down a bit, and the demand for incumbent worker training really ramped up. And so as we see the recovery coming, we're going to see the demand for entry-level manufacturing come back with a full vengeance, because that demand has not gone away, and the silver tsunami is still coming in manufacturing, but we just had a little bit of a lag time. And so it's really important that we continue to support those programs.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, I have at least one constituent who is a little older than 40, and he was trying to retrain himself for a new career in IT, and was not allowed because of his age. Do you have in your department, are you trying to restrict IT job training to people under 40, or is that the Department of Labor?
No, not at all. We're not trying to restrict
We don't have any
anybody
age
for any
discrimination
age group.
policies, so we should follow up, Representative, if there's a specific program. That's the first I'm hearing of that.
Okay, because I do have some folks that need a permanent career change, even before COVID, but also because of COVID, there's some people that can't go back to their original job, and they are going to need to learn a new one.
Happy to follow up with you directly on that.
Thank you. And the third question is, and I have no magic answer here, but maybe you've been thinking about it. How do we improve the state's investment in new businesses so we get the permanent higher wage jobs for our investment in the company we're investing in? I know the agency has been criticized by fiscal watchdogs, and they may or may not be valid criticisms, but I guess it's hard for legislators to predict who is worth investing in that will stay here and who is a bad risk. Is there any way to improve our success record when we decide to invest in a new company?
Yes, Representative, is the short answer, and we're doing that. I mean, over the past 2 years, we've meaningfully reduced, the number of companies that we've quote unquote invested in or provided direct assistance to, really trying to shift to what we call a performance-based job creation program. And there's currently legislation, proposed legislation, I should say, before the legislature to shift to this Jobs Connecticut program, where jobs would need to be created and it would be done by industry as opposed to by companies. So there is no winner picking, it's by industry, and we're focused on minimum wages in industries that we think can grow in Connecticut and grow the state's economy. So we really are trying to level the playing field and not expose taxpayers to expensive incentive programs where there's really not a benefit for the taxpayer that's providing the incentive. So that is already happening, and we certainly take those audits very seriously, but you should expect to see in the future years a very different outcome given we're shifting the programs and we're really minimizing the incentives.
Okay, well, that's very reassuring. And I didn't quite get an answer to my first question, so I'm going to go back to that one again. What do you consider the center of manufacturing training for the South Central Connecticut region?
When you say the center, sorry, Colin asked the same question. We want to make sure we're answering it. You mean the physical, if it's an actual location like a community college or a technical school, or?
Well, for example, if I have a manufacturing interested constituent, do I really have to tell them to drive all the way to a Snuntuck Community College? That's like almost out of the state. Or is there somewhere, or should I be directing them to a training center in the greater New Haven area?
If someone lives in Wallingford, just to be clear, where should you direct them?
Yeah. So if you look at the investment the state's made in the advanced manufacturing centers around the state, we've got 9 of them. And if you draw a 20-mile radius around each one of those, we have the whole state covered. You literally can't be in Connecticut. You almost literally can't be in Connecticut and be more than 20 miles away. For you, I think the 2 areas would be, primarily go down to Gateway or some of the programs up at Middlesex. I know there's a cohort that just graduated this week from Gateway of students, primarily young, some mid-career, but each one of those students had multiple offers coming out of that. And I believe a number of those were from companies in Wallingford. So that's what I would say. You again, nobody needs to travel more than 20 miles to get access to a advanced manufacturing center in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, that's good news. And the other day we were talking to a different agency. They said that Gateway's campus at North Haven might be a possibility for additional manufacturing training. What do you see that in your future?
I know there's some discussions there. Those are, I think, being led by that community right now. I don't know, where that falls into the investment plan. Kelly, I don't know if you're aware of that.
You mind if I interrupt, Representative Yacarino? I represent North Haven. We're trying to have a conveyance from ACES, a Gateway to ACES community, to ACES area cooperation cooperation for education. So no, that's not going to happen, Mary.
Okay, so ACES has,
The gateway's still going to use the mechanicals, auto mechanics for the basement. The town's still going to own the property as far as the field use. And then ACES, the goal is to have a conveyance bill this session where ACES transfers over to Gateway. Gateway stays where they are in New Haven, except for the automotive.
okay, well, that's
Thank you.
good to know. All right, thank you, team. Appreciate your answers.
Thank you, Representative. My co-chair, Dorinda Borer.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator, for the indulgence for a second time. Just 2 quick follow-ups because I know we're near the end. I'm just thinking that the Women's Business Development Council would typically receive approximately $500,000 from the state for the purpose of coordinating grants to women and minority-owned businesses. And we're currently working to restore and again provide that funding to the organization through the appropriations channel. But I'm wondering if there might be a better opportunity to work through one of DECD's business, like large business grant program, because they're already an established organization with a great reputation and a good network. So have you ever had any discussions around that, or can we potentially talk about that partnership offline?
So Representative, we do talk to, we think highly of WBDC and what they do, and I've worked very closely with them during the pandemic. I do believe the best place though to consider funding them from an operating expenses perspective is the general fund. That's how it was done in the previous biennium. We certainly can discuss it more, but that would be our perspective.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to put it out there, and sounds like you've considered it already. And then just finally, I know we discussed arts and culture grants, and I appreciate, Commissioner, you mentioning that we need to think a little differently when it comes to our investments. However, I think what we're saying is we're focusing on that $10 million that's in the unallocated portion for the grant program that was authorized through a prior bond bill that was negotiated between the executive and legislative branch for the purpose of supporting the cultural and historic programs. And I just want to stress that we have a real interest as the legislative body to see those funds being used in our community. Those grants in the past were between $25,000 to $150,000 for an organization. And at a time when we see a number of these organizations starving for support, it truly can be the difference for them between staying open and closing their doors. So, unallocated funds, and this isn't, this isn't unique to your agency. We've been discussing this in all of our agency meetings, that the unallocated funds count towards our bond cap. So we really don't want to see any money left on the table, so to speak. And I just want to leave you with this, that, the agencies, we discuss with the agencies new programs and new opportunities and consideration for funding. But sometimes it's difficult for us when we're making those decisions to consider new programs when the programs we are stressing we'd like to see dispersed are still sitting in the queue. So just wanted to hammer home how much we would like to see those funds go out into the community.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Understood.
Representative Borer, you're in my head, so I want you to get out of it right now. That was going to be part of my closing.
Okay.
Thank you. We're on the same wavelength.
That's why we're co-chairs.
I do want to say I truly appreciate you, Commissioner Lehman. I know where we started, and you've proven to be who you said you are with these projects and thinking differently and the work that's being done. I really do look forward to hearing more at another time. We've gone a half an hour over. That just tells you how important you are to us, but you are the economic engine that's going to keep everything else going for us to grow Connecticut and get us back on track. So I sincerely thank you. I know all of my members are very appreciative of the work that you're doing, but you heard from Representative Mashinsky what they say from you about you outside of the building, and that's what's really important, how the community sees you. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much. I just want to really underscore the point, and I know we're over time, but we have the whole DECD team here, and this has really been a team effort over the past year, and will be a team effort going forward. So really, all the appreciation needs to go to the staff and the hardworking folks at DECD. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk with this committee, and we'll continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a great weekend.
You too.
If there is such a thing. Take care.
Take care now.
All right. Okay, we have people in the waiting room, huh, Tom?
Yeah, they're here. I think, I believe they're in here. I think it's the Commissioner of Housing is,
Yes. I'm here.
okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. You can start whenever you're ready. I apologize. We went way over half an hour, but it was really important questions that we were asking and getting great feedback. So I apologize for keeping you waiting.
It's all right. Good afternoon, Senator Moore, Representative Voters, Senator Martin, Representative Piscopo, and distinguished member of the General Bonding Subcommittee. I am Seila Mosquera Bruno, Commissioner of Housing. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Governor Lamont's recommended biannual budget. The Department of Housing is committed to its mission, which is to ensure everyone has access to quality housing opportunities and options throughout the state of Connecticut. Many of our programs are aimed at preserving our existing stock of affordable housing, as well as capital funding for new development opportunities. Over the past 10 years, there has been a significant investment into expanding the state's affordable housing stock. During the calendar year of 2020, we were able to complete 24 projects, which amounted to 804 units constructed or rehabilitated. These projects represented $36 million in state resources and $252 million in total investment. For our current activity, we have 58 projects under construction or rehabilitation. With a little over 1,800 units, this represents $119 million in state funding and $305 million in total investments. We have authorizations in a variety of existing bond funds, including the Housing Trust Fund, which serve individuals and families with incomes up to 120% of area median income, and the Affordable Housing Program, commonly referred to as FLEX, which serves individuals and families with income between 0 and 80% of the area median income. Under the Affordable Housing Program, the department is authorized to transfer up to $30 million to the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority to rehabilitate existing developments within the state's supportive housing portfolio. There are 12 SSHP rehabilitations completed in the calendar year of 2020. That consisted of 492 units with a total DOH funding in the amount of approximately $13 million. For current activities in 2021, 6 SSHP rehabilitations have been completed, consisting of 341 units. Total DOH funding for this current activity is in the amount of approximately $14 million. Although there are existing commitments and awards for some of our current authorizations, there is always ongoing review of the department's development portfolio. This review is done in consultation with our development partners, the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, and other funding partners, with the goal of identifying and prioritizing projects that are ready to move forward quickly. The department also works closely with the Office of Policy and Management under our current programs in order to better align our available funds with the priorities of the administration. Governor Lamont's recommended authorization for fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 across all of these programs in the neighborhood of $355 million. The Department of Housing supports the recommended biennial budget submitted to you by Governor Lamont. Thank you for your time. And I think I am here today just with Aaron. All of my other staff had some type of medical related issues and they couldn't be here. But thank you very much.
All right. So Aaron Turner's with you.
I think he should be there somewhere.
All right.
But they left me alone today.
They all jump ship on you, huh, Commissioner, on a Friday afternoon?
Oh
like
my God.
Monday morning cold. Well, thank you for coming before us. Appreciate that anyway. And again, I apologize for us running long in the last meeting. My first question would be the flexible housing and the Housing Trust Fund program. How are those two related?
So one allow us to do developments. The Flex program allows to provide subsidy for developments that target incomes between 0% and 80% of the area median income. A lot of the rental housing are done with the Flex, and the trust fund allows for targeting up to 120% of the area median income, which help us to assist some of the mixed income developments as well as home ownership.
Is that mixed use or is that strictly housing?
Mixed income, the money, it can be in a mixed use, but the money is just for housing.
Just for the housing part of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got an unallocated balance for the flexible housing and the Housing Trust Fund. How much is left over, is already obligated?
So we have, I'll get back to you with the specifics on those numbers.
Okay. And so then the 10-year, $300 million reinvestment initiative in the state-sponsored housing portfolio that was announced under the previous administration, is that still going on?
Yes. Not completely the 30 million, but by projects, as the projects gets ready. As I mentioned, this past year, we have several projects, not completely, it's about half of that we have been working with several of the nonprofits that own those units.
What parts of the state are they?
They are all over the state. I can give you, yes, I can send you a list of where they are.
Okay. So I'm gonna see what questions are here from my members. And so Representative Piscopo, my ranking, has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you for coming late on a
Good
Friday
afternoon.
I don't see any hands from the Eastern Connecticut delegation, but I was just curious on the crumbling foundations. A lot of money has gone into that, some 80 million already, and it looks like 20 million more this fiscal that we're in. I'm sure you've done a cost benefit analysis of some progress that you've made. Are you satisfied with that, or do you think it was well spent? Was it a good program? Or?
Representative, unfortunately, that money is a pass through to DOH to the captive insurance. So the captive insurance is the one that manages that.
Okay, and would they, when the auditors come and audit the Department of Housing, would they also look at that expenditure in their audit? I didn't read the audit report from Housing yet.
No,
Okay.
That's the captive insurance has their own books and financials.
Thank you very much. And not the flexible housing, but your bigger fund, the Housing Trust Fund, as your requests come in for development, and someone's going to want to build some housing, and they allot so much affordable that meets your whatever your requirements are. If they're more in, so we say, an outlying area, Thomaston, Connecticut, so to speak. They're not near any real public transportation hubs or does that weigh in on your decision to to grant those, to help with those, that kind of housing?
So let me see if I understood your question. If we are open to communities, to small communities other than the big cities, perhaps, is that the question?
Yes.
Yes, we actually work in both. We are encouraging small towns to do their affordable housing planning. We are providing technical assistance. We're providing pre-development. So what we're trying to do is to work with them to get them through a process that they can get ready for participating in programs that we have. The smaller towns will work directly at DOH. Bigger projects, we work with the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority to leverage the resources that they have with the tax credits, the 4% and the 9%.
Thank you, Commissioner, very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner, during COVID, I know that there was a lot of homeless people who, it was a scramble. I know because I got involved here in Bridgeport, a scramble on where they could be, where we could home them, find a place for them to live during COVID. So isn't there funding for something like that in your budget?
Yes, and we did work with all our providers to move those individuals to hotels. So we did concentrated shelters, and also the people that were on the street, we were trying to bring them to hotels. But yes, we did receive CDBG COVID, and we are working actually with 2 nonprofits and 2 municipalities, one of them to acquire a hotel so that they can be providing a little more permanent. A portion of the hotel is going to be permanent housing, and another portion is going to be shelter, but the permanent housing will be receiving the services that they require. Some of them do need some mental health treatment as well as substance abuse. So it's a more kind of reshaping the way that shelters are being provided. And if we have more opportunities to do that, we will do that.
So you're looking at acquiring a hotel as a place of residence for them?
We are looking at providing the resources for a nonprofit to acquire the hotel. Is the state knows that we're not going to buy it.
You're not going in the house. You're not going in the property rental business. Okay. And so, I would hope that based on what we just went through, that we would be planning for the future, because I don't think we were prepared for that. A lot of things we weren't prepared, not just housing. But I know that was really tough, and I really stepped out of my purview in many places, trying to find housing and getting involved in all this, because we had no plan here and nobody knew where it was going to come from. Did you get COVID funds to cover some of those expenses?
Yes.
You did? Okay. Yeah. And so you're planning for the future. So if we have, God forbid, but any type of incident in the future where we have so many people who need to come off the street, besides just it being cold, that we're putting together an emergency plan on how to handle that?
Yes, and we are also ramping up the production, trying to also build, because the affordable housing stock is very limited. So we are trying to do that too.
Okay. I'm going to take some of my members' questions. Representative Duchette.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hello, Commissioner. And first, I just want to say for Rep. Piscopo, I guess I'm the one here representing the Eastern Connecticut delegation, Crumbling Foundations Land, and I can tell you that yes, we very much love that program. It has worked quite efficiently. I can take you around to houses that right now are being raised off the ground. I can tell you from my my law practice doing real estate closings, there are people who are able to save their homes and sell their homes after having their foundations replaced, and tremendous demand upon that program. And I think, and I guess maybe, I don't know if the committee our subcommittee has discussed this yet. My understanding is that there is a bill, either originating planning development or insurance, that will remove the sunset date and ask us to authorize another bucket of money for that program. I think another 100 million, but I'm not exactly sure. But that's something I think that we'll have to discuss, and we'll probably get referred to the Finance Committee. But question for you, Commissioner. I have a couple of I guess CHFA related questions And it looks like they're probably on a medical leave today too. They're not with you today? Anyone from CHFA?
No, they're not, but I can try to address or I'll get back to you.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. So, you know, we have two line items. One that I'm interested in, and actually have had quite a few conversations with CHFA on the banking committee. The first one is Emap, and we've had a lot of discussions revolving around Emap. Essentially in preparation for what could be an uptick in foreclosure activity and you know, financial distress in the real estate market. And we want to make sure that Emap is poised to meet the potential demand that may result as a result of the pandemic and the lifting of the various moratoriums, foreclosure moratoriums, and so forth, and the forbearance programs that have been in place. So I guess my first question is about Emap. There's no authorization or request for Emap. So I guess the question is, was that contemplated at all, number one? And number two, the federal funds coming in from the most recent Assistance Act that are specifically targeted for foreclosure relief. Is your office involved in that at all? And how much is of that, and how is that going to flow through to CHFA?
So the first question on the EMAP, we had an emergency assistance for homeowners, and it was not utilized that much. And that was, I think, because of the forbearance for most of the insured loans from the federal government. So they still had those resources, and that's the reason why they didn't approach us for another allocation. On the new resource that is coming from the federal government, we still do not have all the details. Treasury has not made a decision how those funds will flow, probably through CHFA, but we still don't have all the details. We will get back with more on that.
Okay. And I've had some discussions with the folks at CHFA, because one of our proposals in the banking committee was to sort of expand EMAP this year, again, in anticipation of an uptick in foreclosures, trying to help people also not who are behind on mortgages, but also behind on their real estate taxes and condo association fees and things like that are also liens on the property that could lead to foreclosure. And so there was a suggestion that we want to make sure that we are able to spread out the money that we have. But my question, wearing the hat being on this subcommittee, is how much do we anticipate needing, and what support would you need from us to make sure that there was enough to meet the demand of those programs? So that's of concern to me. So yeah, I would love to hear back from you or them or both on that. And then second, sort of related question, CHFA program, the down payment assistance program, again, that's on our sheet here as having some unallocated, actually, no, I think that one, I think was requesting some money, is it 4.5 million that I see in 22 and 4.5 in 23? Is that right?
I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's correct.
I think that's what I saw. And sort of the same question there is I would love to see this statistics on that program. That's another one. I think it's a really hot real estate market right now, and we also again have a proposal in the banking committee to expand those programs a little bit, or expand the reach of those programs, which could result in an uptick in their utilization. And those, again, my personal experience is it's a fabulous program, reaches a lot of homeowners, creates a lot of homeownership opportunities, and lifts people up into building wealth. And so would love to see all the numbers on that program, and make sure that we're giving it enough to continue to be successful.
Thank you for that question. And as you mentioned, homeownership is so important, and it's going to be one of our top priorities for this coming year. I will definitely ask Nandini, the CEO, to schedule a meeting and we can go over. We have been working on a strategic planning and the down payment assistance. We have increased that. We want to really be strong, as I said, this year on the homeownership promotion, as well as the financial incentives that we're going to be giving to first-time home buyers.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Commissioner, would you provide that information to the entire membership?
Absolutely.
And didn't you roll out a new program this year, just recently on the down payment
Yes, on the down payment assistance that was increased. So we will send you the information on the whole program.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Borer, your hand is up.
Yes, I think maybe Representative Farrar was before me.
Okay, Representative Farrar, I apologize.
That's okay.
No problem. We're all here in it together in the last minutes. Thank you, Chairwoman and Representative Borer. Hi, Commissioner. Thanks for being with us. I just had a quick question, and again, if you'd like to follow up with us with more information, happy to have it. Particularly around the Healthy Homes program. Just wanting to understand how that program has been functioning in this era of COVID, and if there's anything kind of moving forward from a bonding perspective that you think is needed for that program to succeed.
Thank you for that question, and I will send you some information about it.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Representative Borer.
Thank you, Senator Moore, and hello, Commissioner. I just want to take the opportunity to say hello and welcome you and thank you for being here. It's so good to see you, and thank you for all you've done over the past year. I know it's been a difficult year. I just have a logistical question. We just had DECD before you, the agency before you, and one of their unallocated balances was to support homes in the West River area in New Haven and Woodbridge related to foundation issues. And I'm just, sometimes I get a little, confused about why one program's in one agency and not the other. Wouldn't that be a housing program, or are you involved in that at all?
I'm not involved at all. That was before my time, and it makes sense. But
right.
Yeah, I don't know why it went to these.
Okay, so maybe we can move programs like that in the future to make sure they're in the right lane, so that they have the, not that DECD is not, certainly capable of managing them, but we have, our different agencies, and for crumbling foundations to be within the Department of Housing, but other challenges for home foundations to be in other agencies doesn't make sense to me. And then the other question I had is, do you have a breakdown, and you don't have to have it today, obviously, but the number of housing units completed or under construction and in the pipeline? Is there somewhere where we can see that breakdown?
Yes, and I will send it to the group right after the meeting. No, Monday. Today is Friday, and the end of Friday already. But yes, we will send it to you.
By Friday night, we're all a little, confused on what day it is. But yeah, that'd be great. If you send it to myself and Senator Moore, we could just make sure we disseminate it to all the other members.
And do you want the list of all the projects that have been done this year, or
and in the queue? You know what? I'll send you an email, just like a breakdown.
Okay.
Of what we're looking for, and then you could just respond to that if that works.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, great. And thank you to you and your team again.
Thank you. Although they left me alone today, right?
We'll get them. We'll get them.
We know where to find them.
Yeah.
Commissioner, CHFA, that's the Finance Authority?
Yes.
How does that work with you? Does that fall under your purview?
It's a quasi, but I'm the chair of the board.
Oh, okay. All right. I was wondering because someone else said, I think it was Representative Duchette mentioned it, and I thought it was a quasi-government agency.
yeah, I was appointed by the governor to be the chair, and it has worked pretty well because we actually are trying to work together and maximize both agencies' resources.
Okay. Are there any other questions for my members? I see none. I thank you for coming before us and sharing your information.
Thank you very much for having me, and we will follow up with.
Tell your team we look for them. Give them a hard time.
I know. I will tell them that you guys treated me really bad.
Yeah.
Because of them. No, thank you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So I see no other business for us today. Tom, you want to talk about what happened next week because of us going into?
Yeah, so I haven't seen the emails yet, but we were throwing around some other dates for next week to make up for OPM because of session next week. So it looks like Wednesday the 14th is off, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going into session at noon.
Yeah, so once I talk to you guys, I'll send out an email to everyone, but I don't have full word on when we're doing it yet.
Okay. Any comments? I think this went well today, and I thought that Commissioner Lehman's group, a lot of questions, a lot of good information, enough to have an informational on all the things they're doing, especially taking us into the future after COVID. So they are the economic engine for us in many ways. So I want to thank my co-chair and my ranking. This has been a really much easier process than I think we anticipated with so many new people on board, but I think it's working well. And I want to thank our staff and administrators and anybody who's helped us through this. So I appreciate all of y'all working together with us this week. Last week also. Next week will be, we'll see what it brings.
Yeah, I'll send out an email, right, Senator and Rep. Orr, when I hear confirmation from you guys for the last meeting.
Yeah, as soon as we close out, I'll send something to you, Marilyn, and we could figure out a date and send it to John and send it to
Senator Wong.
Who's the co-chair?
Senator Wong. Senator Wong now.
Senator Wong.
Yeah, and then I'll get it out to the group.
And then we got to reach out to OPM to see what their schedule is as well, but we'll figure it out in the next day.
Correct.
Okay.
And Tom, there were some things that people asked for. Do you have notes? So we
Yep, I do. Yep. So as soon as I get them, I will send them out to the entire group or the chairs first or whatever. But yep.
Anything else? All right then. Have a great weekend. If you're having one, have a great one. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.